You know, usually when we talk about learning a new language, there's this underlying expectation of precision.
Oh, absolutely. Like it's a science.
Right. It is framed almost like engineering. You learn the rigid grammar rules, you memorize the vocabulary words on a flashcard, and, well, the textbook just points to a sentence and says, there it is.
Subject, verb, object.
Exactly. Put them in this exact order and you will be perfectly understood.
Yeah, it feels incredibly binary when you are in the classroom. It feels like solving a math equation.
I always thought of it like building a Lego set.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
You just follow the instruction manual, you snap the blue block onto the red block, and boom, you have a sentence, correct or incorrect. It's clean.
And honestly, it is comforting.
Very comforting. When we are stepping out of our comfort zone, trying to speak a language that isn't our mother tongue, we desperately want things to be visible. We want them to be, perfectly categorized.
Because the alternative is terrifying.
It is.
The alternative means letting go of the manual.
Right. But then, inevitably, you step out of that quiet, pristine classroom and into a busy, noisy restaurant in a foreign country.
Yep. The real world.
Plates are clattering, the music is playing, people are laughing, and suddenly that pristine engineering blueprint you memorized is completely useless.
It just goes out the window.
Totally. You realize you aren't looking at a math equation anymore. You are looking at a social landscape that is, well, honestly, it's murky, it's chaotic.
It is the absolute definition of linguistic muddy waters.
Mm-hmm.
Because a restaurant isn't just a place to, exchange money for calories.
Right. It's so much more than that.
We like to think it's just a transaction, but it is actually a highly choreographed social dance. It has its own unwritten rules, its own specific vocabulary that native speakers use without even thinking about it, and, well, its own deep cultural expectations.
And it's murky, it's loud, and there's an unwritten script playing out all around you. So today we are taking a set of notes detailing a diner named David's Night out in New York with a friend, and we're going to freeze time.
I love this approach.
We're going to decode that script. For everyone listening, especially if you're learning English, we are going to slow things way down, unpacking the entire life cycle of a restaurant visit in English.
From the very first phone call he makes the day before to the moment he calculates the tip at the end of the night, we are going to extract the exact phrases, the subtle cultural nuances, and the polite etiquette you need to navigate this environment.
Okay, let's unpack this, because ordering food in a second language is universally nerve-wracking.
Oh, universally. Everyone feels it.
I remember the first time I tried to order a coffee in Paris, my heart was beating so fast I thought I was going to pass out.
Just for a coffee.
Just a coffee.
Uh-huh.
You are worried you will mispronounce something. You are worried you won't understand the server's accent, or that you'll somehow break an invisible rule and embarrass yourself.
Yeah, that social embarrassment factor is huge.
But here's the secret that native speakers know, and what we're going to show you today. It actually follows a very predictable script.
It really does.
If you learn the script, you master the experience. You go from feeling like an anxious outsider, hoping not to make a mistake, to feeling like a welcomed guest who is actually in control of their evening.
Because the anxiety almost entirely comes from the unknown. But once you realize that the server is going to ask you the same 5 or 6 questions in almost the exact same order every single time you dine out, you can anticipate them.
You don't have to translate on the fly.
Exactly. You just have to know your cues.
So let's get ready for those cues. Our notes tell us that David's journey doesn't actually begin at the restaurant doors. It begins the night before on his phone.
Right.
He calls a popular Italian spot in New York to secure a spot. Now, I have to admit, even in my native language, I sometimes get a little spike of anxiety when I have to call a restaurant.
Oh, me too.
I much prefer using an app.
Yeah.
But often, calling is the only way to get a good spot.
Phone anxiety is incredibly common, especially in a second language, because you lose all the visual context.
You can't see their face.
Right. You can't see the person's face. You can't read their body language.
Yeah.
You only have the words. And the phrasing David uses here is crucial for setting the right tone.
Okay, what does he say?
The source notes highlight 2 perfectly interchangeable phrases for securing a table. David tells the person on the phone that he wants to make a reservation.
Make a reservation, okay.
But the notes also point out you can simply say, book a table.
Make a reservation or book a table. I want to linger on this for a second because I know language learners often get paralyzed trying to pick the, quote unquote, best or most correct phrase.
Yes, the fear of choosing the wrong one.
It is so important to know that these mean the exact same thing in practice. You don't need to stress about picking the right one. To my ear, make a reservation sounds a tiny bit more formal, maybe just because reservation is a longer, slightly more bureaucratic word.
That makes sense.
But book a table is incredibly common, highly efficient, and perfectly polite.
It's interesting. The history of booking a table is actually quite literal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, before computers, the host or the maitre d' at the front of the restaurant managed a massive physical leather-bound ledger. A book.
Literally a book.
Literally.
No.
When you called, they wrote your name into the book. So when you say, I'd like to book a table, you are invoking a very old hospitality tradition.
I love that.
But what I find truly fascinating about David's phone call isn't just the verb he uses, it's the specific prepositional phrase he uses right after when the host asks for his name.
Oh, this is a great detail in the notes because he doesn't just say, I am David or my name is David.
Which would be the literal translation from almost any other language.
Right. Instead, he says it's under the name of David.
Yes, under the name of
I
David.
use this phrase all the time, but I've never stopped to think about it. Why do we do that? Why do we add those extra words under the name of instead of just directly giving our name like we are introducing ourselves at a party?
Because you aren't at a party and you aren't really introducing yourself as a person. It is a linguistic shortcut that immediately communicates your familiarity with restaurant protocols. Think about it from the restaurant's perspective. They have that physical book, or these days, a digital screen divided into time slots and table numbers.
They have a system.
Exactly, they have a list of categories. When you say under the name of, you are acknowledging their organizational system. You are saying, look in your system under this specific alphabetical heading.
Oh, I see. It creates a tiny bit of polite transactional distance.
That's a great way to phrase it. You aren't just a hungry person demanding entry. You are a planned, categorized event in their ledger. It shows empathy for how their business operates.
Wow.
It is a tiny, almost invisible signal that says, I know how this works. I'm a professional diner.
That makes so much sense. It shows, you know how the game is played before you even walk through the door? And then fast forward to the next evening. David actually arrives at the Italian restaurant with his friend.
The moment of truth.
He walks up to the podium, the hostess greets them, and he repeats this exact phrase. He says, "Hi, we have a reservation for 2. Under the name of David." Boom.
Seamless.
The script is executed perfectly, and the hostess instantly knows what to do.
Now contrast David's smooth entrance with the alternative mentioned in our source materials, which is the concept of the walk-in.
Oof, the walk-in. Let me tell you, walking into a popular, busy restaurant in a major city without a reservation.
How stressful.
I always compare it to flying standby at the airport.
Flying standby. That is a very visceral comparison. I like that.
It is, because you are completely giving up your agency. You are showing up, dragging your luggage, or in this case, your hungry friend crossing your fingers, and hoping that someone else missed their flight or skipped their dinner just so you can take their spot.
You're at their mercy.
It is a state of total vulnerability. Now, if it is a super casual place, like a local breakfast diner, a quick neighborhood cafe, or, a fast casual burger joint, walking in is totally fine.
Because that's how their business model operates. They rely on high turnover.
Exactly. But if you are going somewhere nice, somewhere popular for dinner, walking in is a massive risk.
It is a complete gamble with your evening.
You might be told to wait an hour, standing shoulder to shoulder with strangers in a tiny entryway. Or you might be turned away completely. Booking a table entirely removes that risk.
And, crucially, it sets a completely different psychological tone for your entire dining experience.
How so?
Well, think about it. If you walk in and have to wait for 45 minutes standing by a drafty door, getting bumped into by servers carrying trays, you start your meal feeling tired, hungry, and probably a little frustrated. Your baseline mood is negative.
Yeah, you are annoyed before you even see a menu.
Precisely. But if you have a reservation, the dynamic is flipped. You walk past the line of people waiting. The hostess looks at her screen, smiles, and says, "Right this way, David." You are immediately treated like an anticipated, valued guest.
Like a VIP.
Exactly. The restaurant has been waiting for you. It elevates the entire evening from the very first second.
Speaking of the hostess, I actually have a clarifying question for you, representing our listeners who might be used to entirely different dining cultures around the world. Because the rules of space in an American or British restaurant can be very, very specific.
Yes, they can be quite rigid.
So let's say I walk into a restaurant and I'm a walk-in. I don't have a reservation. It's quite crowded near the door, but I look past the crowd and I see one single empty table sitting way in the back corner.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Is it ever okay for me to bypass the hostess, walk over and just claim that empty table? Or do I absolutely have to wait for the hostess to greet me and give me permission?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of English-speaking restaurant etiquette and the fundamental structure of how front-of-house operations work, the answer is an emphatic absolute.
Yeah.
You must wait.
So do not touch that table.
Do not touch the table unless there's a large, very obvious sign at the door that specifically says, please seat yourself.
Which you usually only see in very casual pubs or cafes.
Right, exactly. Unless you see that sign, you should always wait near the entrance podium. The hostess is not just a greeter. They are the air traffic controller of the dining room.
Air traffic controller, I like that.
It's true. They are managing a highly complex, invisible grid. They know which servers are currently overwhelmed and need a break, and which servers have empty sections. They know that the empty table you see in the back corner is actually reserved for a party of 4 that called to say they are running 10 minutes late.
So it's not actually available.
Exactly. If you bypass the host and seat yourself, you completely disrupt their entire logistical system.
I see. And honestly, from a selfish perspective, if you seat yourself, you are probably going to sit in a section where the server hasn't been assigned or where they have no idea you're there.
Yes, that happens all the time.
So you'll sit there for 20 minutes without water, feeling ignored and angry, when really it's because you broke the rules of the room.
Exactly. You have placed yourself outside the system. So the golden rule, wait to be seated. Allow the host to guide you.
Wait to be seated. Got it.
And when you are being seated, as our notes from David's story point out, you actually have some agency. You have choices about the physical environment you want to experience. When the host just grabs the menus to walk them to a table, David asks, could we have a window seat, please?
And because he was polite, and presumably because he had that reservation and a window seat was available, she accommodated him.
Right.
The physical layout of a restaurant is an interesting psychological study in itself. The sources list a few key seating vocabulary words that learners should know. First, obviously, the window seat, which offers natural light and a view of the street. It's great for people watching.
Always a popular choice.
Then we have the counter.
Yes, the counter. This is a very distinct type of seating, often a long, elevated bar-like area where you sit on tall stools.
The counter is fascinating to me because it serves a very specific social purpose. It is great if you are eating alone.
Yes, solo dining.
Because sitting at a table for 4 all by yourself can sometimes feel a bit awkward for people. But the counter is designed for the solo diner. You are usually facing the kitchen, watching the chefs cook, or facing the bartender. You have built-in entertainment.
Or if you are with a friend, but you just want a really quick, casual meal without the whole formal production of a table, the counter is perfect.
It accelerates the dining process, but then on the opposite end of the spectrum, the sources bring up the booth.
The booth.
In my humble opinion, the absolute best seat in any restaurant, anywhere in the world.
You were quite the advocate for the booth. Why is that?
Who isn't? The sources describe it simply as a table with high backs and soft upholstered benches on either side, and they note that it feels very cozy. But I think it's so much deeper than that. From an evolutionary psychology standpoint, a booth provides a feeling of immense security.
Security. In a restaurant.
Yeah. Think about it. A restaurant is a chaotic public space. People are constantly walking behind your chair. Servers are rushing past with hot food. But a booth gives you a little private sanctuary in the middle of all that chaos.
I suppose that's true.
The high backs of the bench literally protect your back. They also act as acoustic baffles, blocking out the noise from the rest of the dining room so you can actually hear the person sitting across from you. You feel anchored. If I ever have the option and I'm trying to impress someone or just want to have a deep conversation, I will always ask the hostess, could we have a booth, please?
You are describing the creation of a micro-atmosphere. An atmosphere is another key concept highlighted in the text that language learners need to grasp, because the vocabulary used to describe a restaurant dictates how you should behave within it.
Okay, let's get into the adjectives.
Restaurants are often described using specific adjectives. We just talked about cozy, which implies warmth, comfort, dimmed lighting, and often a smaller, more intimate physical space. Then there is crowded,
Crowded usually sounds negative, like a crowded subway car, but for a restaurant, it can be a positive descriptor.
Very much so.
It implies it is bustling, popular, maybe a bit loud, but full of kinetic energy. You go to a crowded tapas bar because you want to feel that energy.
And then on the higher end of the scale, we have elegant. This adjective suggests a highly sophisticated environment. Subdued acoustics, crisp white tablecloths, polished silverware, and impeccable quiet service.
And this progression of adjectives from cozy to elegant leads us directly to a topic that causes immense anxiety for everyone, not just language learners.
The dress code.
The dress code. Because the atmosphere directly dictates what you are expected to wear. You do not wear the same thing to a crowded burger joint that you wear to an elegant French bistro. The sources bring up a conversation where David and his friend are discussing whether they need to worry about their clothes for this Italian place.
It is a highly valid concern, and navigating the vocabulary of dress codes is essential. The sources identify 3 main categories that you will encounter in English-speaking dining. The first is casual.
Casual is a relief. It's easy. Jeans, t-shirts, sneakers, basically what you wear on a normal weekend when you were running errands. You can breathe easy if the website says casual.
True.
But then we hit the second category, business casual. And I have to confess, business casual is my personal nightmare.
It is a phrase that terrifies many people.
It feels like a complete oxymoron. It's a contradiction in terms. Business means formal, casual means relaxed. Put them together, and what does that even mean?
It's notoriously vague.
I once showed up to a dinner where the dress code was business casual. I wore what I thought was a very nice, crisp polo shirt and dark jeans. I walked in, and literally every other man in the room was wearing a tailored blazer, a button-down shirt, and dress shoes. I felt like a teenager who had accidentally crashed a corporate retreat. Where is the actual line drawn with business casual?
Your confusion is entirely justified. The history of business casual is actually rooted in the 1990s tech boom, where companies started relaxing the strict suit and tie rules, but didn't want employees showing up in gym clothes.
So they created this gray area.
They created a vast, ambiguous middle ground. But generally, in an English-speaking restaurant context today, business casual means looking neat, polished, and put together, but stopping just short of a full suit and tie.
Wait, so no jeans at all?
Well, very dark, clean, non-distressed jeans might pass in some places, but it's risky.
Okay, so absolutely no ripped jeans and no t-shirts, absolutely no shorts.
Correct. For men, it almost universally means a shirt with a collar like a button-down worn with slacks or chinos, and nice shoes. Definitely no running sneakers or sandals.
What about for women?
For women, it is a bit broader. It could be a nice blouse with a skirt or tailored trousers, or a casual dress that isn't too revealing or too formal.
And then the third category is formal, which is exactly what it sounds like. Suits, ties, elegant dresses, often requested for galas or incredibly high-end Michelin-starred restaurants. The sources make a really vital point here for our listeners. They strongly advise always checking the restaurant's website first to confirm the dress code. Why is that step so critical?
Because it saves you from immense public social embarrassment right at the door.
Like my polo shirt incident, but worse.
Much worse. It isn't just about feeling out of place. Some elegant restaurants enforce strict, non-negotiable door policies. They see their atmosphere as a curated product, and the diner's attire is part of that product.
Oh.
They will literally not let you inside the building if you are wearing shorts, a baseball cap, or open-toed shoes. Imagine going through the effort of researching a place, making a reservation under your name, traveling across the city, and then being turned away by a polite but firm host because you didn't spend 30 seconds checking the dress code online.
Oh, that would be a nightmare. It ruins the entire evening before it even begins, and it goes right back to our core mission today. Knowing the script removes the anxiety.
Exactly.
You check the website, you decode that it requires business casual, you put on a nice button-down shirt, you call and book a table under the name of yourself, you arrive, and you ask for a booth. You are entirely in control. You belong there.
You have navigated the entry protocol flawlessly. You are seated. The acoustic isolation of the booth is lovely. The lighting is perfect. But now, the real challenge begins.
Yes. The hostess smiles, walks away, and shortly after, your server arrives. They introduce themselves, and then they hand you a piece of paper or a heavy leather booklet that might as well be written in ancient hieroglyphics. The menu.
The menu can certainly feel overwhelming to anyone, let alone an English learner. It is dense with text, full of complex culinary terms, descriptive adjectives designed to make you hungry, and it is often visually crowded.
It's a lot to process.
But our source material reassures us that no matter how complex the restaurant, almost all English menus follow a very strict logical hierarchical structure.
Let's break that structure down, because once you see the skeleton of the menu, you stop panicking. I actually like to think of a restaurant menu like the lineup for a rock concert.
A rock concert. Walk us through that analogy.
Okay, stick with me here. At the very top of the menu, usually on the first page, you have the appetizers, or as they are often called in British English, the starters.
Right.
These are small dishes, soups, salads, maybe some calamari or bruschetta. They are designed to come out first. In my concert analogy, these are the opening act. They are a local band. They aren't the main reason you bought the ticket to the concert, but they get you warmed up, they get the crowd excited, they stimulate your appetite without making you full.
A culinary warm-up act. I see the vision.
Exactly. Then your eyes move to the center of the menu, or the next page. This section is usually the largest. It is the main course, or as it is confusingly called almost exclusively in North America, the entree. This is the headliner of the concert. This is the star of the show, the big steak, the elaborate pasta dish, the whole roasted fish. This is what you came to experience.
Now, you just mentioned something fascinating about the word entree. This is a massive linguistic trap for international travelers.
Yeah. It really is, because if you go to France or even the UK or Australia, the word entree, which literally translates from French to entrance, means the appetizer. It is the entrance to the meal. But in the United States and Canada, entree means the massive main course. How on earth did we mess that up so badly?
It is a wonderful quirk of linguistic history.
Do tell.
Originally, in classical French dining, meals had many, many courses. The entree was a smaller, hot dish served before the massive roast meats.
Oh, okay.
But as dining culture evolved, especially in America during periods of economic shifting or rationing, restaurants simplified their menus. They collapsed the multi-course meal into fewer stages. During this simplification, the word entree somehow migrated and became attached to the main dish itself.
So it just drifted over time.
Essentially. So, for our listeners learning English, if you are in New York or Toronto, entree means the big main course. If you are in London or Sydney, entree means the small starter.
That is a perfect example of why this deep dive is necessary. The dictionary will fail you there. Okay, so we have our opening act, the appetizers, and our headliner, the main course. What about the side dishes? The text mentions sides, like French fries, steamed vegetables, or a side salad.
Where do they fit in your concert?
The side dishes are the backup dancers. They support the headliner. A grilled steak on its own is great, but a steak with a side of garlic, mashed potatoes, and asparagus. The backup dancers elevate the performance. They make the star look and taste even better. They are ordered separately to complement the main event.
The analogy holds up surprisingly well. And of course, at the very end of the menu, often on a separate dessert menu entirely, you have the dessert.
The dessert is the encore. The main show is over, you are completely satisfied, maybe a little tired, but the band comes out for one last sweet, triumphant song. A slice of chocolate cake or some tiramisu.
Beautiful.
And throughout this entire concert experience, you are enjoying beverages, the drinks section, which usually has alcoholic and non-alcoholic options.
So understanding that flow appetizers, main course, sides, dessert, beverages, gives you a map. It helps you navigate the dense text. You know exactly where to look based on what stage of the meal you are currently discussing with your table.
Right, it shrinks the task down.
Exactly. But the sources don't just focus on the physical layout of the menu, they focus heavily on the spoken language of ordering. And this brings us to perhaps the most critical cultural and psychological lesson for any language learner.
Yes. This is where the engineering blueprint really gets thrown out the window. The text highlights the exact phrases David uses when the server asks what he wants. He does not look at the server and say, "I want sparkling water." He says, "I'd like the," or "I'll have the."
What's fascinating here is the stark cavernous difference between using the direct verb to want and the modal verbs used in phrases like "I would like" or "I will have."
Because in other languages, "I want" is totally fine, right?
In many languages around the world, the direct, literal translation of "I want" is perfectly acceptable, efficient, and polite. It is simply a speaker stating a factual desire to the person whose job it is to fulfill that desire.
Makes logical sense.
But in English-speaking restaurant culture, saying "I want the chicken" or "I want a water" lands very, very differently.
It sounds incredibly demanding. To a native English ear, saying "I want" in a restaurant sounds like, A toddler speaking to a parent in a toy store. I want the toy. I want it now.
Precisely. It sounds like you are barking an order. It strips the interaction of all nuance and respect. English culture, particularly in the realm of service interactions, heavily values indirectness as a form of politeness.
Indirectness.
Yes. This is tied to linguistic theories of face saving. We soften our request to preserve the dignity of the person we are speaking to. We wrap our desires in conditional phrases. When you say, I would like, it is technically a conditional statement. It carries an unspoken second half. I would like this if it pleases you to provide it, or if it is possible.
Even though we both know I am paying for it and you are definitely going to bring it to me, we play this linguistic game of pretending it's a polite request rather than a commercial transaction.
Exactly. It is a shared social fiction. And the sources emphasize pushing this even further by using questions instead of statements. Saying, could we have the pasta? Instead of give us the pasta.
Yes. Using please combined with modal verbs like could, would, or may drastically alters the power dynamic. It transforms the interaction from a master demanding a servant into a polite, respectful request between two equals.
This is a fundamental shift in how the service industry views itself in modern Western culture. Servers view themselves as hospitality professionals, not as a servant class.
That's a huge distinction.
It is. If you speak to them with the bluntness of a master, I want, bring me down, they will resent you, and your service will likely suffer. If you speak to them as a professional, I would like, could I please get, they will bend over backwards to ensure you have a wonderful time.
This is so important. I want to look directly at you, the listener, right now. If you are learning English and you take away nothing else from this entire deep dive, take away this one simple rule. Erase the phrase, I want, from your restaurant vocabulary forever.
Ban it.
Ban it completely. Replace it immediately with, I'll have, or I'd like, or could I get. It is the absolute easiest, fastest way to instantly sound like a fluent, polite, culturally integrated speaker.
The notes also provide a crucial survival phrase for a very specific moment of panic, because menus are complex and reading in a second language takes time.
Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes the server approaches your table, pen in hand, and you are simply not ready to make that polite request.
Oh, this happens to me all the time, even in English. I get distracted talking to my friend. The server suddenly appears out of nowhere and says, are we ready to order? And my mind goes completely blank. I haven't even looked at the entrees. I panic. I feel the pressure of them standing there waiting.
And under pressure, people make terrible food choices.
Yes, they do.
The perfect phrase provided in the text to diffuse this pressure is, we need a few more minutes, please.
We need a few more minutes, please. It's brilliant. It's a verbal shield. It acknowledges the server's presence. It asks them respectfully to give you physical space, and it instantly removes the pressure. You don't have to scramble to pick a random dish just to make them go away. They will say, no problem, take your time, and they will leave you alone.
And if you do take your time, but you are truly stuck for a ganner, maybe the menu uses obscure Italian terms, or you simply can't decide between two dishes. David's story gives us another excellent strategy.
What did he do?
He wasn't sure what was good, so instead of guessing, he turned the server into an ally. He asked a direct question. What do you recommend?
I love this phrase. What do you recommend? For an English learner, this is an absolute superpower. Sometimes we let our ego get in the way. We want to prove we can read the menu perfectly. But if you are struggling, or if there are ingredients you don't recognize, just drop your ego and ask the expert. The server tastes the food, they know what dishes other customers send back, and they know what the kitchen does best.
It is a moment of vulnerability that usually yields great results. It also opens up a genuine dialogue, moving you away from a robotic transaction. The text notes another variation of this. What's the special today?
The specials. These are mysterious. They usually aren't printed on the regular menu.
Correct. Specials are dishes the chef creates outside the standard menu. This usually happens for two reasons. One, the chef found a beautiful seasonal ingredient at the market that morning, like fresh truffles or a specific type of fish, and created a limited time dish around it.
Oh, so it's super fresh.
Exactly. Two, the kitchen has an excess of a certain ingredient they need to use up before it goes bad. Either way, asking about the specials shows you're an engaged diner, interested in the restaurant's unique daily offerings.
So in our story, David asks for a recommendation, and the server suggests the seafood pasta. Excellent. He uses his polite, I'll have the seafood pasta, please. But then we hit a very modern and increasingly critical part of dining out, navigating dietary needs. David's friend is a vegetarian.
The phrasing she uses to navigate this is excellent. She doesn't just stare at the menu hoping to guess what is safe. She asks the server directly, are there any meat-free options?
Clear and polite.
The server then confidently points out a wild mushroom risotto. The vocabulary here is fundamental for modern dining. She identifies as a vegetarian, which means she consumes no meat, poultry, or fish, but might eat dairy and eggs. The text also contrasts this with vegan.
Right. Vegan is much stricter. It means no animal products at all, no meat, but also no butter, no cheese, no milk, no eggs, not even honey. It's a very important distinction to make clear to the server.
Very important.
And then David himself chimes in with something that shifts the tone of the conversation entirely. He says, I have a nut allergy, so please make sure there are no nuts in my dish.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of restaurant operations, stating an allergy is completely fundamentally different from stating a dietary preference.
How so? Like practically speaking.
If you simply say, I don't really like nuts, or could I get this without the walnuts? The kitchen treats it as a taste preference. The cook making your salad might just leave the walnuts off the top.
Right, simple modification.
But their cutting board might still have walnut dust on it, or they might use the same tongs. But if you use the precise medical language from our sources I'm allergic to, it triggers a massive, legally mandated safety protocol within the restaurant.
Right. It elevates from a taste issue to a life or death health issue.
Exactly. When you say, I'm allergic to nuts, or I'm allergic to shellfish, the server will stop what they are doing and take it incredibly seriously. They will type a special modifier into their computer. The ticket printing in the kitchen will likely have the word allergy flashing in red ink.
Wow.
The chef will physically wipe down their station, get a brand new sanitized cutting board, and use fresh utensils to ensure absolute zero cross-contamination.
That is a lot of unseen labor.
It is, because in the U.S. and many Western countries, restaurants face immense legal liability if they serve an allergen to someone who disclosed an allergy. That is why precise language is vital. You cannot be ambiguous or shy about allergies in English.
So you shouldn't just say, nuts make me feel bad.
No, that is not enough. You must use the specific word allergic. You say, I am allergic.
Okay, so let's recap our progress. We have successfully navigated the dense menu. We have used our polite, indirect requests saying, I'd like thee instead of I want. We've communicated our dietary restrictions and medical allergies clearly. We've ordered our sparkling water, our mushroom risotto, and our nut-free seafood pasta.
The server gathers the menus, smiles, and walks away. You can finally exhale. You relax in your cozy booth. You chat with your friend. The hard part is over.
But is it? What happens when the food actually arrives and things don't go exactly as planned? You thought you learned the script, you ordered perfectly, but suddenly there is a plot twist. The kitchen makes a mistake.
Which brings us to the middle phase of the meal. Mid-meal, troubleshooting, and getting attention.
The sources outline a very specific rhythm to an English-speaking meal that might surprise international diners. Shortly after your hot food is delivered to the table, usually within 2 to 3 minutes after you have just taken your first bite or two, the server will almost magically reappear at your side.
Yes, the text refers to this specific interaction as the check-in. The server will approach the table, briefly interrupt your conversation, and ask something like, is everything okay? Or how is everything tasting so far?
I always find the timing of this hilarious because without fail, they almost always seem to ask the question at the exact second. I have a massive fork full of pasta in my mouth.
Every single time.
And I have to just give them a thumbs up while chewing frantically.
It is a universal phenomenon, but it is a critical, mandated part of American, British, and generally Western service culture. The two-bite check. They aren't just making polite conversation to be friendly. They're actively, preemptively checking to see if they need to fix a massive error before you progress too far into the meal. They want to catch a cold steak or a missing side dish immediately.
Right. And if everything is actually good, if the steak is cooked perfectly and the pasta is hot, the appropriate response is incredibly simple. The notes suggest just making eye contact, nodding, and saying, "It's delicious, thank you." You do not need to give a long, poetic review of the subtle flavor notes. Just a quick, positive confirmation so they know they can leave you alone to eat.
Now, during this check-in or at any other point during the meal, you might find you need something extra. The text specifically highlights David noticing his friend's glass is empty and asking the server for a refill of water.
Could we get a refill, please? Now, let's pause here because the concept of a refill is a deeply, profoundly North American phenomenon, isn't it? The free, bottomless glass.
It is a cultural hallmark. In the United States and Canada, it is standard, unquestioned practice that certain beverages, specifically standard drip coffee, tap water, iced tea, and fountain sodas like Coke or Sprite, come with unlimited free refills. A good server will often just walk by and quietly bring you a completely new glass or top off your half-empty glass from a pitcher without you even having to ask.
The abundance mindset, where does that even come from?
It traces back to the rise of the American diner culture and the post-war economic boom. Fountain soda, syrup, and ice are incredibly cheap for a restaurant to produce, so offering unlimited amounts became a cheap way to signal value, hospitality, and American abundance.
Fascinating.
However, it is vital for international travelers, especially Americans traveling abroad, to know that in many parts of Europe, Asia, or South America, this concept does not exist.
Oh, absolutely not. If you drink your Coke in Paris and you ask for another one, you are paying for a second bottle. If you want water, you are often paying for a sealed bottle of mineral water. There's no free tap water pitcher continuously circulating.
Exactly. The economics of dining are different. But in the US, if you do need more of a free beverage and the server hasn't noticed, refill is the exact specific noun to use. Gotta get a refill on my iced tea.
But let's get back to troubleshooting. Say you need a refill, or maybe you dropped your fork on the floor, or you want some extra napkins. The problem is your server isn't hovering at your table. They are across the crowded room attending to another booth. How do you get their attention?
The source materials are extraordinarily clear on what not to do in this situation. The text explicitly warns that raising your voice across the dining room and shouting waiter or waitress is considered profoundly rude in English-speaking countries.
It is a huge cultural taboo. You see it in old classic movies, right?
Yeah.
A wealthy man in a tuxedo snapping his fingers loudly in the air and yelling garçon, or waiter, over here.
Oh, it's terrible.
But if you do that today in a modern restaurant, the music will practically stop. The entire restaurant will turn to look at you, and the staff will immediately, deeply dislike you.
This raises an important sociological question about the evolution of the dining room. Why is this behavior, which used to be standard, now considered so taboo?
Well, why is it?
It comes down to a fundamental shift in how Western society views the service industry and class dynamics. In the past, servers were viewed almost as a literal servant class. Shouting an order or snapping your fingers reflected a rigid, unequal social hierarchy. The diner was the master, the server was the servant.
Wow, stark terms.
But modern Western culture, particularly in America, strongly emphasizes the illusion or reality of an equal footing in service interactions.
It's about mutual respect.
Exactly. The server is viewed as a skilled professional, providing a service, not a servant, at your beck and call. They're doing a job, just like you do a job. Shouting or snapping shatters that mutual respect. It is degrading.
So if I can't shout, and I can't snap my fingers, how do I magically summon them across a noisy room?
The sources advise relying entirely on nonverbal communication first. Eye contact is paramount. A skilled server doesn't just look at the plates they're carrying, they constantly scan the room, looking at their guests' faces. If you catch their eye and hold it for just a second, they know immediately that you need them.
Just a look?
Just a look. You can pair that eye contact with a very small, subtle wave or a slight nod of the head.
Not a frantic wave like you are stranded on a desert island trying to flag down a rescue helicopter.
Yeah.
Just a little polite raise of the index finger or the hand.
Exactly. A gesture of acknowledgement. And if they happen to be walking briskly past your table, you do not physically grab their arm or shout. You simply lean in slightly and say, clearly, but at a normal conversational volume, excuse me.
Excuse me. It's the Swiss Army knife of English politeness. It works for squeezing past someone on a train, and it works for pausing a busy server. So you catch their eye, you give the subtle nod, you say, excuse me, and the server comes over. Now, we have to deal with what is undoubtedly the hardest part of the meal for anyone who hates conflict: complaining.
According to the text, David's meal was perfect, so he didn't have to complain. But the source material, knowing how common mistakes are, prepares the listener for two very typical scenarios: receiving the wrong order or receiving cold food.
The exact phrases they provide for these scenarios are fascinating. Let me read them straight from the notes. For cold food, you say, excuse me, I think this is cold. And for the wrong dish, you say, I'm sorry, I ordered the chicken, not the beef. Okay, I have to stop here and push back on this a little bit.
Please do. What is the issue?
My issue is with the first two words. Why in the world should I apologize? The text is explicitly telling me to say, I'm sorry I ordered the chicken. But I didn't make the mistake. I ordered clearly. I used my polite modal verbs. The server wrote it down wrong, or the kitchen plated the wrong dish. They brought me the beef. Why am I starting my completely justified complaint with an apology? It feels like I'm taking the blame.
It is a very astute observation, and I completely understand why it feels wrong. It can be incredibly frustrating for language learners who interpret the words literally, but what you are looking at is not an admission of guilt or fault.
It's not.
No, it is a highly specialized linguistic tool known as a polite sandwich or a conversational mitigator.
Okay, a polite sandwich. Explain how that works.
In English culture, direct, unfiltered complaints are almost always perceived as aggressive attacks, even when the complaint is completely factually justified. If the server puts down a plate of beef, and you point your finger at it and say, you brought me the wrong food, I ordered chicken, it immediately puts the server on the defensive.
Because it sounds accusatory.
Right. Their stress levels spike. It creates an adversarial, hostile relationship.
They feel attacked, so they might argue back or blame the kitchen, and suddenly it's a fight.
Precisely. The goal of complaining in a restaurant isn't to win a debate or prove you are right. The goal is to get your chicken as quickly as possible by starting your sentence with, I'm sorry, or excuse me, you are deploying a mitigator. You are softening the linguistic blow.
I see.
You are essentially communicating an unspoken subtext. I am sorry to be an inconvenience, and I know you are busy, but it frames the mistake as a shared, unfortunate misunderstanding rather than a direct accusation of their incompetence.
Oh, wow. So I'm sorry, in the specific context doesn't mean it is my fault. It means I'm actively softening this interaction so we don't have an emotional fight.
Exactly. It is a social lubricant. It ensures the staff feels respected despite the error. If you use the polite sandwich, the server will almost invariably apologize profusely back to you, snatch the plate of beef, rush to the kitchen, and fix the issue happily and quickly, rather than defensively or resentfully.
That's a clever strategy.
You maintain the mutual respect and the professional distance we talked about earlier. So, excuse me, I think this soup is a bit cold, or I'm sorry, but I believe I ordered the vegetarian option.
That is fascinating psychology hiding inside a simple throwaway phrase like, I'm sorry. It really proves that this is a dance. You aren't just communicating facts, you are managing emotions.
And if you master those steps, you can navigate any mistake gracefully. So the crisis is averted. You got the correct food, it was warm, your water glass is full of free refills, you've eaten everything, and the plates have been cleared away. You are satisfied. But there is one final, massive hurdle to clear before you can walk out the door and head home.
Yes, the moment of truth. The climax of the evening. The grand finale, bills, splitting, and tipping. This is where the language meets math and where social dynamics meet actual money, which can be stressful in any language, let alone a second one.
Let's start with the initiation of the end. David and his friend decide they are far too full for dessert. The notes tell us he catches the server's eye using the exact nonverbal communication we just discussed, no shouting aloud, and he initiates the end of the meal by saying, "Could we have the check, please?"
Now, the sources make a crucial geographical and linguistic distinction here that every traveler needs to memorize. David is dining in New York, so he asks for the check.
Right. In the United States, check is the absolute standard term for the itemized list of your charges.
Yeah.
If you go to a diner, a cafe, or a Michelin star restaurant in America, you ask for the check.
Check, got it.
However, in the United Kingdom, in Australia, in New Zealand, and in many other English-speaking countries heavily influenced by British English, asking for the check might result in a confused look. In those countries, you must ask for the bill.
Check in the US, bill in the UK. Very simple, but very important. So you ask for the check. The server nods, walks to their computer, and a few minutes later brings a little black leather folder, or maybe a small metal tray, places it quietly on the table, and walks away. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yes.
Because paying isn't just about handing over a credit card. It is a complex, often awkward social dynamic between you and the person you are eating with.
It is indeed. Money changes the atmosphere of the table instantly. The notes detail several key phrases to navigate this dynamic. Sometimes the server will preemptively ask David and his friend if they want to pay together or if they want to split the bill.
Splitting the bill. This is also sometimes known colloquially as going Dutch. It just means dividing the total cost equally among the people at the table.
Right.
The text also offers a slightly different phrase. Pay separately. If you say, "Can we pay separately?" the server will usually look at their notepad, ask what each specific person ordered, and actually bring you two entirely different itemized checks.
Paying separately is incredibly common among casual friends, colleagues at a business lunch, or large groups where one person had a salad and water and another person had a steak and 3 cocktails. It prevents resentment.
Totally.
But then there is the alternative dynamic. What if you want to be generous? What if you don't want to split it? The text introduces a fantastic colloquial phrase. It's on me.
It's on me. The notes translate this as meaning I will treat you or I am paying for everything. I honestly think this is a magic phrase.
The magic phrase. How so?
Think about the physical tension that occurs the exact moment that little leather folder hits the table. Everyone stops talking. Everyone looks at it. People start reaching for their wallets slowly, trying to gauge what the other person is doing.
It's a standoff.
It is. People start doing that frantic, awkward mental math, trying to remember if they had 1 glass of wine or 2, calculating their exact share. It's a tense, silent 30 seconds of social choreography.
The awkward choreography of the check. It is universally uncomfortable.
Exactly. But if one person immediately reaches out, grabs the leather folder, looks at their friend and simply says, "Put your wallet away, it's on me," the tension vanishes instantly. It evaporates. It is a magic wand. It is a generous, decisive move. And using that specific idiom, "it's on me," sounds so natural, so fluent, and so effortlessly cool.
It is a wonderful phrase to have in your vocabulary, assuming, of course, that you have the budget to back it up.
Yeah.
In our story, however, David and his friend decide on a more egalitarian route. They decide to split the bill. He puts his credit card in the folder for his half. The server runs the card, brings back a receipt with a pen, and David now faces the final and undoubtedly most confusing, intimidating aspect of American dining culture.
Tipping. Oh boy. The tip. Gratuity. This single concept causes more anxiety for international travelers than the menu, the dress code, and the polite sandwich combined.
And rightfully so, because it involves math, invisible social expectations, and serious cultural consequences if you get it wrong. The sources are very clear on the baseline expectations. David left a 20% tip because, as he noted, the service was excellent. The text states as a hard rule that in the U.S., tipping between 15% to 20% of the total bill before tax is standard.
It's important to clarify that while it is technically called a gratuity, implying it is an optional gift for good service, in the U.S., it is practically mandatory. It is part of the cost of the meal.
This requires a brief dive into history and economics to understand why. Unlike in Europe, where servers are generally paid a standard minimum living wage by their employer, the U.S. operates on a tipped minimum wage system.
Which is very confusing for tourists.
Very. This system has complex historical roots, stretching back to post-Civil War era and the Pullman train porters, where employers pushed the burden of paying workers directly onto the consumer. Today, a restaurant server in the U.S. might legally make only $2 or $3 an hour from the restaurant itself.
Which means their entire livelihood, their ability to pay rent and buy groceries, relies entirely on the tips left by the diners. If you leave a 0% tip because you think tipping is optional, you are essentially forcing that person to have served you for free.
Right.
It is considered highly offensive, a massive social faux pas, and it sends a message that the service was catastrophically terrible, like they spilled soup in your lap on purpose.
Exactly. 15% is for basic, acceptable service. 20% is for good to excellent service. Anything below 15% is a statement of dissatisfaction. However, the notes offer a vital, potentially money-saving piece of advice for our international listeners.
Oh, this is crucial.
While doing the 20% math is standard in the US, the text points out that if you're dining in the UK, in parts of Europe, or in places like Taiwan, a service charge might already be automatically included in the final printed total.
This is so important because restaurants are starting to do this more in the US as well, especially for large groups. You have to be a detective. You have to put your reading glasses on and look closely at the bottom of the itemized receipt before you sign the credit card slip.
What should they look for?
If you see a line item that says gratuity included, or service charge 18%, or auto-grat, the tip has already been calculated and added to the total.
If that is the case, you do not need to add more money on the blank tip line unless you were truly blown away by the service and want to leave extra. If you don't check the receipt, you might end up double tipping in a blind panic, paying 40% on top of your meal.
It requires extreme vigilance at the very end of the night when you are tired. You have to navigate the English language to ask for the check, manage the delicate social dynamics of splitting the bill with your friend, and then perform a percentage-based mathematical calculation based on complex cultural labor laws, all while digesting a heavy Italian meal.
It is an intellectual and cultural workout. But our protagonist, David, did it perfectly. He paid his half. He correctly calculated a 20% tip. He signed the receipt. He said thank you to the server on the way out. And he and his friend walked out into the cool New York night completely satisfied.
And just like that, the dance is over. We have successfully deconstructed the entire life cycle of his evening. Think about how far we've come. We started with the phone call, learning the history of the physical ledger to understand why we book a table and say under the name of to create transactional distance.
We analyzed the psychology of the physical space, why the high backs of a booth provide acoustic security, and why bypassing the host to seat yourself destroys the invisible grid of the dining room. We navigated the ambiguous nightmare of the business casual dress code.
We broke down the menu like a rock concert, from the opening act appetizers to the encore desserts, and uncovered the bizarre historical migration of the French word entree to mean main course in America.
We learned the absolute necessity of polite modal verbs using I'd like instead of I want to maintain mutual professional respect. We covered the legal and health implications of clearly declaring an allergy rather than a preference.
We explored the post-war history of American abundance that led to the free refill, how to use eye contact instead of shouting to summon a server, how to use the polite sandwich to send back cold food without starting a fight, and finally, the complex math and history behind splitting the bill and tipping 20%.
It is a massive amount of information. It is linguistics, sociology, history, and economics, all wrapped into one meal. But remember our core mission today. We wanted to build a sturdy, reliable safety net of vocabulary and understanding.
Right.
If you know these phrases, and more importantly, if you know the context behind them, you don't have to panic when the menu's handed to you.
Right. Studying these phrases on a flashcard in a vacuum is fine for a test, but understanding why they work, the face-saving psychology of indirect politeness, the mutual respect of making eye contact instead of snapping your fingers, the structural logic of the menu, that is what actually gives you real functional confidence in the real world.
Knowledge is only truly valuable when it is contextualized and applied.
So to you, the listener, congratulations. You have survived our intense linguistic meal. The next time you find yourself standing outside an English-speaking restaurant, whether it's a bustling, cozy cafe in London, an elegant steakhouse in Chicago, or a crowded diner in New York, take a deep breath.
You're ready for it.
You know the script. You understand the invisible rules of the room. You know steps to the dance. Don't be afraid to step out onto the floor, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, because even native speakers stumble over pronunciation or freeze up when the server asks for their order sometimes.
The structural foundation we provided today will ensure that, regardless of small mistakes, you will be understood, you will be respected by the staff, and most importantly, you will be well fed.
But before we officially let you go and end this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought. Something provocative to mull over the next time you are sitting in a booth waiting for your food. Today, we have focused entirely on you. We talked about how you speak to the restaurant staff, the phrases you use to get what you want, politely and efficiently. But next time you dine out, I want you to completely flip the script.
Flip the script. How do you mean?
I want you to stop focusing on your own words, and I want you to listen incredibly closely to the subtle ways the staff speaks to you.
Turning the tables.
Pay attention to the adjectives the server uses when they recite the specials. Notice how they don't just say, "We have salmon." They say, "We have a pan-seared, wild-caught Alaskan salmon with a reduction of." Notice how they use language to literally make your mouth water.
It's pure marketing.
Notice how, when you order a steak, they might casually suggest a specific, slightly more expensive glass of red wine that would pair perfectly with the cut of meat.
You were talking about the psychology of the upsell, the invisible hand of the server guiding the transaction.
Exactly. How do they subtly guide your choices and increase the final total of the bill without you even realizing you are being guided? They are using their own script. Pay attention to their language, their pacing, their suggestions, and you might just uncover a whole new invisible layer of restaurant psychology. Because if you think learning your side of the script is fascinating, wait until you see how the professionals improvise on theirs.
That is a wonderful, slightly dangerous thought to end on.
We started today talking about how language isn't always like rigid engineering, how it's not a clear-cut black and white math equation. It's a living, breathing social dance, and it can feel murky and chaotic. But hopefully, after spending this time unpacking David's evening, the steps to that dance are a little more visible to you now.